So I'm sitting down here with congressional candidate Jennifer Perelman, who is running a grassroots campaign for District
23.
And she's asking, of course, for donations. That means you, the audience, since her grassroots campaign really needs the people's support. And I thought it was real cute how you said $23
For 23 for 23.
Yeah, there you go. And she also has really adorable Gen 2020 earrings as well.
I do.
Yes.
I do a very cute Gen 2020.
This is going to be a historic election, and this is in itself a very historic interview because I don't think it's every day that you see a candidate interviewing a fellow candidate. So this is going to be really cool for you guys who are interested in meeting the Jen who is outdoors and is I've heard that you've said that you not only were born here, but you go way back. Your family's been...
I am a second generation native South Floridian. My dad was born in Miami. So, and actually my mom wasn't born here, but she was here from 3 months. So both my parents grew up in South Florida, and I was actually born in my district. I was going to say this district, but we're not in my district. So
Yeah.
I was born in my district and North Miami.
There you go. Jen is more like a Florida Gladesman girl. She's here with the alligators and...
I've been called a townie.
Oh, I like that.
I've been called a townie. That's what Northerners call people that are from places. They call them townies.
Yeah, but what do the Yankees know about what goes on in South
Well,
Florida?
But South Florida's not South, you know.
No, it's not. This is mostly Cuban, Boricua, Venezuelan territory. And Jen even knows a little bit of Spanish as well.
poco.
So, yeah, un poquito. Yeah, un poquito. Yeah, ya tiene la buena sustancia. But the thing is, Jen is super brave, and we have to highlight the fact that she is going up against Debbie Wasserman-Shultz, who nationwide is mainly known for her scandalous involvement with the whole DNC stuff in 2016, how plenty of us Bernie people were really bummed out at the results of that. But she's not really known, Debbie, as somebody who's done a lot of things in her career, besides the scandal, right? So besides taking in millions of dollars from Big Sugar, you name it, you know, she's the classic corporate Dem. So Jen is being super brave in this, and so that's why early on I just said, guys, if you are interested in her campaign, if you want to support, if you're part of this nationwide movement of supporting real candidates from the people, then the people got to step up. The people got to, actually take part of this, because Jen will only be indebted to you, the audience, her voters. Now, let's just go right into the debate, the actual topics. Jen, here in South Florida, I feel like we're really tied to the whole environmental issue, and it's unfortunate that a lot of people down here see that as more like a tree hugger hippie stand, when it's not. When you consider that our property values are going to go down, we only have like around a decade. Besides the usual talking points of the Green New Deal kind of inspiration, what other things do you think that you can implement as a congressional candidate who will not only watch out for Florida, since we have a series, we're involved in this, what kind of things is your campaign looking forward to fixing?
The key thing that always amazes me about the entire South Florida delegation is that none of them are taking a leading role on this. So while there are a couple that probably, I believe Lois Frankel supports the Green New Deal. A couple of them are being somewhat supportive, but no one's taking a leading role. We're the Sunshine State, and we don't have a single representative taking a leading role on solar initiative. Why? Well, we know why. They take money from fossil fuels, they take money from FPL, and so they have no interest in really putting out alternative sources of energy. That's just not something that they're going to do. But the key thing people aren't realizing, in addition to the sea level rise affecting our coastline, which is a huge problem, it's going to be affecting our drinking water. People don't realize South Florida is on limestone that is very, very porous, and as the sea level rises, that water is going to come up and it's infiltrating our clean drinking water. And they keep building all these houses and all these condos. I don't know how all these people are going to have clean drinking water. So that's the first thing, is for us to sort of put out this educational component to this, that this isn't a matter of we could just build till the sea level rises on the coast. It's we're not going to be able to have fresh water to drink.
Yeah.
And it's a huge problem. So right now we've been fighting off a particular oil company that's wanting to drill out in the Everglades. I'm sure you heard about the Cantor oil drilling outside of Miramar. And that is huge. That will be built between the two canals that bring us our drinking water. In fact, one of those canals, I'm pretty sure, goes right directly into the Doral area, is where the water comes out of. So where are all these representatives in standing up for what needs to be done down here proactively, not just saying, oh, okay, yeah, that drilling is bad, we shouldn't have drilling, but nobody's proactively doing anything to install, incentives for alternative fuel, for alternative sources of energy. Nobody's doing anything. I haven't heard a single person down here talking about this.
No, plus when you think about our main source of revenue in the state of Florida, we not only have a really big industry for healthcare and all the retired snowbirds and all that, we rely a lot on tourism. And what kind of tourist will want to sink their feet into a sloshy green pile of mess down at the beach if we don't fix these problems, these environmental problems? Then the tourism industry is going to just
I'm surprised
flat
it hasn't.
out die.
The West Coast, and I believe that's partially in your district, right? You go all the way to the West Coast.
Yeah, we have some of that coast. Yeah.
The red tide, which is a natural event that happens naturally, there's nothing unusual about it, but it's been so exacerbated by all the industrial agricultural runoff from the middle of the state, same as the blue-green algae. And so you're seeing not just dead fish here and there, you're seeing, like in Sanibel and up along the beach, you're seeing dead fish, deep water fish, like big fish that are just showing up dead. So this is a massive problem. And I haven't heard anybody talking about doing anything about it. I know that my opponent takes money from Big Sugar.
As does mine.
Okay. And so when you're taking money from Big Sugar and you're giving sugar subsidies, you're basically looking the other way while their toxic overflow goes into our water. Yeah. And so that's unacceptable. So that alone, we need to just get somebody in there who isn't on the corporate payroll. To stand up to Big Sugar, and there's other agricultural offenders, it's not just Big Sugar, but they are the biggest one in Florida that is the source of the blue-green algae.
Which we have to remind our viewers is not just an environmental concern. These agricultural companies need to get with the program and watch out for their workers' health, because we have so many workers down in the other side in the agricultural, because yes, right now we're in the city, but the District 25, for instance, is really bizarrely gerrymandered, and we have people here who are having severe kidney failure because of these chemicals. And they've done so many deep wells here in South Florida, and they found chemicals that are just anti-life. So this isn't just about, in my opinion, this isn't even a political stand. This is about something that will affect us in around a decade. And you know how fast years go by in capitalism. Yeah. But you were talking about candidates that are being funded by corporations. Yes. Meaning they do not have to respond to us. But I really loved how you mentioned in one of your interviews, how you highlighted the fact that if we're paying for these employees, why are they behaving like this? There's a phrase that you use that they're like...
they're insubordinate employees.
That's the one, insubordinate.
They're insubordinate employees. I find it interesting. If I were to say to someone, imagine you have an employee that you're paying, and instead of doing what you want them to do, they're taking money from somebody else and doing what they want to do, and then they're taking more money than you're even giving them to not work for you. In what universe would we accept this?
No, we wouldn't, but I always feel that there is a slight reluctance from us, the people, to hold these people accountable. Yeah. Like, we have standards for the private industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you have workers on your payroll, you demand a certain attitude, a conduct. But then when it comes to politicians, we're always like, well, we shrug our shoulders, let them do what they have to do. No, they are our civil servants.
Nobody sees it that way. See, that's the problem. We need a complete paradigm shift, because instead of looking at these people as employees, which they are, we put these people up on pedestals like they're somehow supposed to be, like this idol worship almost of our elected officials. We treat and it's not just legislative, I mean, it's the executive branch, it's all of we treat these people as if they're leaders. It's not called the House of Leaders. So I find it really, we really almost need to deprogram everybody into understanding that these people work for us.
Yes.
And I think as people feel intimidated by this.
Yes, well, they're afraid.
They're very afraid. And I know in particular they're very afraid of my opponent. She's, and she threatens people, you get on board or else. And it's easy for her to do because she's on the Appropriations Committee. And so when you look at municipalities, they're scared to cross her because she's the one who brings in the money.
Right.
So it's literally dangling strings of money in threats. And that's how these people stay in power.
That's why it's so important to be a part of the national movement in supporting and even running yourself as a people's candidate, so we dethrone these sun gods and people are stop being intimidated by them. But maybe it would help if they weren't all just multimillionaires themselves.
Well, people should stop and wonder how that happened. Because, they make a nice salary, but they don't make enough salary to be the level of rich that they are.
Yeah.
So where is that coming from?
Yeah, the math doesn't really add up.
No. So where is that money coming from? You know what I mean? Is it a matter of you get tips on this and tips on that, so you know where to invest because you're in cahoots with this person, or you're being paid off by that? I don't know. But the appearance of impropriety is overwhelming to me.
It is. That's why our platforms, they might be catered slightly to a district here and there. Maybe in Wisconsin or in California, there are small differences. But mainly, what I see this movement, this progressive, I'm calling it that because there's no other name. But
no,
this people's campaign, essentially, it's about standing up to power, standing up to politics, the way it's been handled, and rising to the moral authority that demands it. I mean, if you're going to serve the people, you need to be standing at the very moral high ground. So, since you're running a grassroots campaign, please tell us briefly what kind of obstacles you've confronted. What are the hits and perils of it?
The first main thing is the party itself. I mean, the Democratic Party is not very favorable toward people challenging their incumbents. They don't like that. So they are supportive of Democrats as long as you're running for a seat that they deem open and available and worthy to be run for. Like if you just pick where you want to run and that's not where they think that they are not supporting, that's just not it. So I have found my biggest obstacle so far is the establishment Democrats. And, it's very telling. But then again, in my district, we're so gerrymandered that I don't really have to worry about Republicans.
Right.
It's, the general election is an easy one there. That's not my concern is the primary. So that's the biggest thing. And money. I won't take corporate money. I won't take PAC money. And so we are going to be relying on small monthly donations from all around the country. And fortunately, there's a lot of people that don't like her.
You got lucky in that way.
I got lucky. And look, I've started this sort of I call it poetic justice for Bernie campaign, and I'm trying to get all of Bernie's volunteers, he has over 1 million, to donate $1 a month to my campaign to oust the woman who cheated Bernie, which I think is poetic justice. So I could potentially be a predominantly Bernie-funded campaign against the person who they see as cheating.
Yes. Gen 2020, donate at least $1.
Yes.
You can do that.
$1 a month, Gen 2020.
Exactly. You mentioned the Republicans are not really a threat, so that means that they don't even bother with your district.
Yeah.
But in terms of the national battleground for these districts, we're seeing that there's a rise in grassroots candidates. Is that happening on the other side? Do they even have a chance?
You mean the Republican side?
The Republicans.
Do they have grassroots? I don't know. I recently was endorsed by Brand New Congress, and Brand New Congress isn't just Democrats. So there's a few independents, and they would endorse a Republican. Their issue is you don't take corporate money, and you agree to what they call the 21st Century Bill of Rights, which is, it's really amazing. So instead of specific policies, they're saying these are our morals, these are our values, and it expands our Bill of Rights to include you have the right to housing, you have the right to education, you have the right to health care, so it's basically an expansion. It doesn't give you the exact policies, which is one of the reasons I like it, because that can vary depending on who your constituents are.
Or who you are.
But they would have Republicans. Like, they wouldn't not endorse a Republican if they were non-corporate. I don't think there's any on the slate this year. I think there's 27 of us that are Brand New Congress.
Okay.
But I haven't seen a grassroots uprising from that Republicans.
No, I haven't seen it either. But technically, they could do it.
They could do it. It's just being non-corporate. Be non-corporate.
It's that simple.
It is that simple.
Yeah. Now, going to your district, there is an issue with regards to the Jewish voters.
Yes.
And Debbie likes to rely, especially on this demographic, to have her votes. But it's unfortunate how whenever you speak about usually leftist policies, or like if you're for the environment, or you want Medicare for all, or the LGBT community, then automatically you're pushed aside as somebody who is anti-Israel. And so I want you to give your audience, anybody who's in Jen's district, listen up, because Jen is not somebody who is anti-Israel or anything like that, because that's what people like Debbie want to paint the picture as.
Oh, I'm sure she'd love it if I weren't Jewish. That would make her life much easier.
Exactly, but the reality is that it's not a black and white world,
no.
And it's not that simple. Do you support the two-state solution for
Yes,
Israel?
I do support the two-state solution. You know, I wish I could say I was more optimistic about that actually being something that could happen. But I am a strong supporter of Israel. I've been to Israel. I have family in Israel. I grew up as a Jew in North Miami Beach, so we were essentially trained Zionists. I mean, that wasn't really an option. But over the past few years, I've had to do a lot of sort of deprogramming and recognize the amount of human rights violations that are going on over there. And I'm walking a very fine line, because there are certain people that no matter what Israel does, you're not allowed to say anything about it. It doesn't matter. They don't pay attention to it. They don't know. Israel can do no wrong. We have to support the state of Israel. And I don't agree with that.
No.
But I do support the existence of a Jewish state. So, for example, I do not support BDS.
Me either.
And the reason, and I actually don't have a problem with the concept of boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning. If you want to boycott businesses that are you feel are illegally occupying in the West Bank, I feel like that's fine. The problem with the BDS movement is that one of their demands is the right of return for Palestinians. And the problem with that is that if all of the Palestinians return to Israel, they would absolutely outnumber the Jews, and there would no longer be a Jewish state. It wouldn't exist.
They would vote against it.
There would no longer be a Jewish state. And so as a Jew, and I recognize this is definitely a bias, that's nothing I would ever be willing to support. So I am completely against what I do consider to be an apartheid-like state that is going on there right now. I don't believe in the occupation of the West Bank. I definitely don't support what's going on in Gaza. I think all of these things are human rights violations. But I can't say that I support the right of return for Palestinians in a way that would completely eradicate the Jewish state.
Of course, because you believe in the right to a Jewish homeland.
I do.
But the problem is that a lot of times people like the comfort of just thinking in terms of left and right, and it's just not that easy, because in Israel in itself, there is a progressive side, there are labor groups, there is the far right situation.
Why don't we have labor groups here?
Well, we've got the LCA.
No, I mean, I'm thinking politically. We don't have any labor. We don't have a labor party.
But there has been an increase in strikes here in America, and that's like an opening of a door to a different way of seeing things. Definitely.
We need to abolish right to work states. Is what we need to. That needs to be a priority. We need federal legislation that undoes the ability of states to be right to work states. That right there is one of the biggest weakening effects of unions have had in my lifetime. So that's a huge problem. And Florida obviously is a right to work state, and it's what keeps people from being able to strike. That's why the teachers can't strike. Now, arguably, teachers have gone on strike in other places that also they're not allowed to, and they've done it, but that's a big step. That's a scary step for them to take. So we need to abolish right to work. I think that's the key thing.
No, definitely. And what about the federal jobs guarantee? What do you have to say about that?
No, I love the jobs guarantee, because what that does is it essentially forces the private sector to raise their wages. Because if the federal is guaranteeing you a minimum wage that's, let's say, hypothetically $15 an hour, then the private sector, if they don't come up to meet that, they're going to lose all their workers. So the federal jobs guarantee essentially, in my mind, and in addition to giving everybody jobs, it's essentially going to solidify the minimum wage raise. And that in and of itself is huge, because that has to happen. And honestly, $15 isn't even enough. I mean, maybe in some small places in the country it might be, but here...
but $15 is not a minimum
living wage.
No,
I mean, there might, like I said, there might be a few. Here in South Florida, I believe we would be at about $23 an hour if our minimum wage had continued to rise with the cost of living.
The cost of living, and you have to bear in mind inflation as well.
Right. But I also think things should be done all at the same time. So, for example, if we do Medicare for all, then that's releasing a huge burden from people. So then if you're not worrying about health care, then you don't necessarily, then maybe you can get by on less than you would if you had to. I mean, so it all has to happen in conjunction together.
Exactly, because we live in communities. The human species itself as an individual is not self-reliant.
No.
These are the parks, we have farms, this is a collective
We have socialist
thing.
roads and socialist police departments
Yes,
and socialist
and
fire
and
departments.
non-libertarian fire departments.
Yes, I know, but it's socialism. You don't want socialism because,
Right.
In fact, as we sit in a nice public park, so.
Yeah, but they're content to have a
Yes.
corporate socialism, socialism for rich. Is the,
Of course.
Yeah, but the thing is that I find it a little troublesome how a lot of times when we get into the discussion of labor rights and strikes and unions, unfortunately, there are many people in South Florida that are turned off by that. And again, the fear factor, they feel that they shouldn't be organizing as workers because they might get labeled as communists.
Yeah.
And so maybe like people in California or in more liberal states, maybe people in New York would look down on this and scoff and laugh, but this is a real thing.
Yeah.
Down here, it is dangerous to be called a communist because it almost zeroes down your chances.
You have to take into consideration the size of the Latino population as to why that's an issue when you start talking about communism and socialism. And so that here, I think, affects South Florida exponentially in terms of, when you want to talk about people being scared of things like socialism and communism, you're going to have that more, especially among communities that are Cuban, Venezuelan, and you have that direct connection to places so that the right can point out, oh, you're going to be just like Venezuela.
But look at it this way. That problem, that stigma, that fear, phobia has now expanded to the rest of the United States because the current administration is enjoying a lot of red baiting. There's a surge in McCarthy style of
See, and you say it's the current
persecution.
administration. I look at Hillary Clinton just out there McCarthy smearing Tulsi Gabbard and Jill Stein a couple weeks ago.
Oh, right, the Russians.
So this is not, I wish we could say it was just this administration.
Yeah.
This red baiting is, well, it's a huge distraction.
It is.
And I also think it's just patently untrue. So, it's silly. And I have yet I keep asking people, what are you scared of? What's going to happen? Is Putin washing up on the shore? Are the boats coming in? Are they taking down the capital? What are the Russians doing? They have 8 military bases in the world. We have 1,000. Their economy is the size of Spain's. What threat? There is no threat there, and yet we have built up this thing since the Cold War that I still have not had one person tell me, what are you worried about? Oh, they're interfering with our elections. Too many elections we're all interfering? I mean, that to me is we interfere in our own elections infinitely more than the Russians have ever interfered in our elections.
In our own election and in other countries' elections.
That's a given. That's a given.
But it also, I feel that the whole red baiting thing, when there's this paranoia, this state of hysteria that anything that slightly looks socialist should be forbidden, I feel like it's just trying to hamper civilian efforts to bring about real change for working class Americans.
Yes.
Because if you can't do certain things, that's a limitation. So if, like, let's say some of your constituents, I'm assuming you already got like that.
Oh, wow, of course.
If your potential voters, if they start, if they were to pressure you, then you might not throw out certain policies that benefit them.
Right.
Because, for instance, Medicare for All, it's not about socialism because this is an ideological warfare. It's about making sure that the numbers add up because right now we can't afford what we're paying.
No, that has to do with, I think, how it's told, how it's explained.
Precisely, yes.
And look, our media is owned by 6 companies that have no interest in having Medicare for All. They don't. So you're never going to get an accurate, accounting of what the people really want because when they're polling people, they're asking them things like, hey, do you want to lose your private insurance?
That's
You're going
how
to lose
they
your
phrase
private
it.
insurance. But if you want Medicare for All. So but truthfully, it has been shown that when asked properly and factually, we are at about 72% of the people in this country support single-payer health care.
They do.
And so that to me means that's not left. That's center. If 72% of the people want something, that's mainstream. So I'm not going to, you could try to pigeonhole me and other progressives and saying, oh, we're so left. Not really.
No.
Not when most of the things that I support are supported by most Americans. That actually, by definition, makes me center.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So we have to recreate the narrative. We have to say, no, we can't let people basically bully the narrative. And that's the difference. And when people do that, when people are hearing accurate information, you'd be amazed at how many people support single payer. 72% support single payer. 52% of Republicans support single payer. Mm-hmm. That's not left.
No, that's being a people's candidate and actually trying to defend the people's needs.
And when you want to go also outside the morality argument, because for me it's a moral issue in terms of we're all entitled to health care.
Yes.
But even if people don't buy that, it saves us money.
That's what I keep saying.
And that was even found by the Koch brothers study. That was the most conservative study has found that over 10 years we saved $2 trillion. Now I've seen it go over $10 trillion on some studies or whatever, but the most conservative study says we saved $2 trillion over 10 years. So it's
a no-brainer. It's like a duh moment. Look, you're going to be having the moral high ground. You're going to be humane. You're going to be the good candidate, a nice person, but also you're going to be saving money. Who doesn't want to save money?
It is, but people aren't told it that way. They're told things like, oh, your taxes are going to go up. This is how I explain it. Let's say you took your premium, your deductible, and your co-pays that you pay every year, and you add that up. Let's say, hypothetically, that comes out to, say, $6,000. I don't know, whatever it is. Pick a number, any number. And so then you say, well, are your taxes going to go up? Yeah, your taxes are going to go up. Maybe you're going to have an additional couple $1,000s in taxes, but that $6,000 is gone. Mm-hmm. So let's just say we always called that the health tax. Why have we always called that the health tax? If we always called it the health tax, then we would say, oh no, actually your health tax is now going to go down. But we've never called it that before because that would make it seem, that would be too reasonable. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to do that. We want to scare people so that they can stay beholden to private insurance companies and so people can be profiting. Does your opponent take money from private insurance?
Yes, he does. Thousands of them.
Same.
So people... And what's misleading is that then he sends out flyers to people's homes saying that that he wants health care for all. Mm-hmm. Don't be so misleading. Don't lie to your voters. It's not true.
No.
It's not for everyone. Because half of America is either uninsured or underinsured, and your party, the companies that fund your campaigns and keep you in power for the last couple of years, they don't want you to support that legislation. So what are you talking about? But you know the people want it. You know this is something that our people are concerned about, which is why he also pretends to care about the environment, pretends to care about the Everglades.
You have to pay lip service.
But developers aren't stopping. They keep growing and expanding and pushing the limits of the Everglades.
Yep. They are interested in their corporate donors.
Yes.
That's it. And it's very clear to me. They do.
It's owning a candidate.
It's owning a candidate.
They're not ours. If we don't pay for them, then they are in the pocket of these big companies. It's that simple. If you don't purchase the candidate, they don't belong to you. They don't have to listen to you.
No, and it's funny because really, ultimately, we're paying them too. So they're double dipping.
Yes.
They're double dipping.
You're right.
Which is where I get insubordinate employees.
Perfect description of it. And talking about insubordination, as a female candidate, you're kind of pushing the boundaries a lot because we know that even though women have gained the right to vote, there is still an underlying misogyny everywhere.
Sure.
Women are still expected to put on their makeup, to speak nicely, to not upset the male powers and all that. In fact, I've heard people say, don't talk too much because the longer you talk, the more men tune out. Well, I don't care if they do tune out or not.
It's because they don't understand. That's all.
Well, their brains better keep up with our dialogue.
That might be.
We don't have to dumb ourselves down so that they feel safe.
Please, I'm just happy we got rid of pantyhose.
I like pantyhose.
Oh, good.
If you want to stand in front of the Queen of England, you're supposed to wear pantyhose. Didn't Meghan Markle have some problem because she didn't wear pantyhose? She's an American.
Pantyhose.
But the thing is, I want to ask you if you've confronted the typical insecure male out there online who, instead of confronting the injustices that are exploiting him and probably have put him on expensive antidepressants, instead of trying to shake off the leashes he's got, usually these men take it out on women, which is why post 9/11 there was an increase in domestic crimes against Muslim women. Wow. Because obviously the nation, we got a little crazy. I mean, my family, we ended up preparing for a doomsday scenario. We saved water in case there isn't going to be an atomic bomb. So we were part of the scared crowd out there tuned to
You
Fox
do realize
News.
that okay.
So the thing is...
Say no more.
Yeah,
Fox
so...
News.
Yeah, exactly, because they were just saying, they're going to come for you, we're all going to die.
They want us in fear. I mean,
Of
all
course.
of that is about keeping
You're
us
more
in fear.
governable.
They keep us in fear, and they keep us fighting amongst ourselves. Whether it's red versus blue, men
Yes.
versus women,
Rich versus poor.
Well, that is the real dichotomy. See, that is the only one that's a legitimate dichotomy.
Yeah.
The rest is sort of like just not made up, but I think being sort of perpetuated as a bigger issue than it actually really is to keep us all fighting amongst ourselves. The only real issue is elite and not, money and not.
Yes.
And when I say money, I mean the 1%, not just...
Big money, nah, $2,000 savings
Right,
account.
right. So that's the only real dichotomy that we need to address in this country. And yet they have us looking the other way from that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want us to look at that because that would actually dip into the oligarchs.
Exactly.
And that can't happen.
No.
So it's much easier to make it be, oh, it's a Democrat-Republican thing. Oh, it's a black-white thing. Oh, it's an LGBTQ thing. Oh, it's... They keep us all fighting in all these little labels and all these little groups.
Yes.
And it's a distraction.
It is. That's why I've always been against this whole ageism thing where older people put young people down or vice versa.
It's another one.
And the war of the sexes and all that. No. So have you confronted people that you notice that they're just exploited, vulnerable people and are somehow bothered by you because somehow they've been trained to assume that anybody who could potentially break their chains is a disruptor to the status quo, and even though they are being held hostage by the status quo, then they take it out on people that are trying to break the chains.
Yeah, I haven't had anything specifically since I've been running for this race that I have found particularly sexist or misogynistic that's happened toward me. But in my life, yeah. I mean, I have not met a single woman that hasn't been violated in some way. Now, granted, it's a spectrum. Not every woman has had some severe violation, but I don't know a single adult woman that hasn't been violated in some way that was at some point considered socially acceptable. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I'll get stuff, but I'm a little older than you. So I remember it even being worse. So I think for me, I had a judge once in Texas tell me that he didn't want to see me again until I was dressed properly for court. I was wearing a pantsuit.
A pantsuit was improper?
Pantsuit, because women wear skirts.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah. So like my perception.
We're violating that because
I'm all in violation. So like to me, it's actually gotten a little bit better on a professional level just because of all the Me Too, and so many people are over aware and overcompensating. And fine, if people want to walk on eggshells because they want to overcompensate, you know what? We've earned that. I'll take that.
Right.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
We got the bad end for so long that if somebody wants to go out of their way and make sure that they're not seeming sexist, all right.
Yeah, I guess it's unfortunate that in my district I still have gotten the comments of little girl and all that, not recognizing that I'm a woman.
I think that has to do with the demographics of the district.
Yes. So.
And you are how Latino is your district? I mean,
it's very high. It's like in some cities down here, it's like 98%.
Yeah. So you're having also cultural issues that you're dealing with as a woman that I'm probably not necessarily going to have at that level, just based on my based on my demographics. So that's also part of it.
Okay. So to wrap it up, because it has
We're
been
losing
getting
look how pretty it is.
it's a beautiful sunset.
Yeah, it is.
Usually really good around the winter season, but winter in Florida.
Hey, we had like 5 minutes of fall yesterday. I'm
pretty
sure it was. It was fall for a few minutes yesterday. I felt it.
Yeah, it was. So let's see. We have the military, because I like how on your website, gen2020.com, you have a very simple and direct way to approach the issues. Because sometimes, like, you look at established candidates, they don't even show their issues.
That's because they don't have them. They answer to corporations, so they don't put out policies.
They're not allowed to have issues? No, sir. No. And I like how you have your criminal justice, which is a big thing here in Florida. And
that's big for me.
Yes, me too. I find that #me too.
I mean, I'm a criminal justice lawyer, so for me,
there you go.
So for me, that is that's one of my big issues, because I happen to know the most about it versus some of the other things. So certain things like foreign affairs, I'm not going to know as much about that as I am going to know.
But you have your stand on that.
Oh, of course,
yes.
I do. But I'm not able to get at least yet, as specific as I don't have any firsthand experience like I have with criminal justice. So I don't have any good personal anecdotes or personal experiences to share about things like, let's say, the genocide in Yemen. I don't have any personal connection to that. So whereas with criminal justice, I have stories.
Yes, but about the criminal justice, I feel like here in Florida, it's a big issue since recently, as you know, and you've mentioned, they passed the by 64%.
Amendment 4.
Exactly. But there are still some obstacles. So if you could explain to our audience,
what the obstacles are?
Yes, like what is stopping them from already being just like all of us? Because if we have a society that believes in second chances, because most people, at least in this district, most people share and were raised in Judeo-Christian values.
Yes.
And we're told that we have to give people a second chance.
Forgiveness.
Exactly. You forgive and you forget. Pasa la página. Reconciliación. So what are those obstacles?
Okay, well, there's kind of good news and bad news. So the bad news is that once we passed that with 64%, yes, our state legislature then came and wanted to further define what the qualifications were for what considers satisfying your sentence, okay?
Yeah.
And so it includes fines, fees, and restitution. Here's the bad part about that, is it really is a poll tax. You're really now conditioning someone's ability to vote on their ability to pay.
Yes.
And it's not okay. However, that being said, the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, which was the organization that pushed for Amendment 4, they knew that would be an issue. In fact, they did focus groups that they found out that if it didn't include those things, that the amendment wouldn't have passed. And ultimately, what they were really trying to do, which they did succeed, was getting rid of the lifetime ban. Florida was one of only a handful of states left that had a lifetime ban on convicted felons voting. Period. Forever. You've served your sentence, you're out, you've paid your fine, you still can't vote. You're a convicted felon. That's it, forever. So, in that regard, we've had a good success last year. That's a very big step. It's really because we're getting in line with most of the states at this point. We're joining current civilization, which is big for Florida. So I actually see it as progress.
Yeah.
And there are some people, myself included, that are going to be doing pro bono work as far as finding out what rights, what fees are owed, reducing things to community service, getting restitutions waived, and doing all these things to try to facilitate the voting. But we are still infinitely better. I mean, so it's a step in the right direction is what it is. It really is. I mean, the lifetime ban was ridiculous. And so we are at least past that now.
Yeah.
And it's an improvement.
But how can we stop arrests in minority neighborhoods? Because the arrest rates are just too high.
It's criminal justice is so much more massive than people realize, because when you hear criminal justice, you think of the law part of it in terms of the trial and the sentence and the restitution, and we think of those things. We don't really necessarily bring it down to the policing level. And on my website, I specifically talk about those underneath my criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
We need to have citizens, like oversight boards that are overseeing police, different police, in different municipalities. We need to be having accountability. So when there is a civil rights violation, that needs to be taken a lot more seriously than it has been. So we need to basically have citizens being able to oversee the police department's actions, having a say-so. And that's something we don't really have.
Yeah.
You've got that blue wall and that's it. And there is a big problem in minority communities, even with minority officers.
Yes.
Yeah. People think, the black police officer, and then he can't possibly be, disproportionately affecting minorities. And we know that's not true.
No.
So, and another problem, the biggest problem that I'm hearing from communities that are minority communities, is we no longer have community police. The police in, say, this community, they're probably from West Palm Beach or Boca or wherever they're from. You don't have police departments where the police are fixtures in those neighborhoods and they know those communities and they know those citizens. Our policing is basically outsourced. So in Liberia, which is basically the historically black neighborhood in Hollywood, and not one of the officers there is from the area. So you've got neighborhoods being policed by total outsiders that don't know their neighborhood, they don't know their culture, they don't know anything. well, what if we had neighborhood police? So it would be like, oh, hey, I know your mom. Go home. Quit playing around and go home, instead of let me just arrest you, direct file you, and then you spend your whole life in prison.
Yeah, because if the police officer is engaged in the community, then he himself won't feel threatened. Because a lot of times that's something to bear in mind. It's not just an abuse on their part. Sometimes you see the human conflict there, and they're officers that have the inappropriate response based on the fact that they fear for their life.
It's that, and they have no vested interest. They have no vested interest in that community.
Exactly, and it's what we were talking about, the fact that we are all interconnected, and we need to acknowledge that, and just go back to what you were mentioning just now, the key word in here, civil rights.
Yeah. And
that's why I also promote a lot of reconciliation, and it's because in here it used to be the squawking and bickering between Cubans, from both sides.
Yep.
But at the national level, we have Democrats and Republicans, and sometimes the independents, the libertarians. We have such a big conflict right now where people are just fishing the words, like, oh, there you go, you supported that, well, I hate you because of that.
Yeah.
And so we're losing the ability to give people a chance to explain themselves, to get along, because democracy and tolerance and beautiful concepts of civilization isn't about having everybody agree with you. The thing is, you have to be above that and be able to agree with or accept somebody who doesn't think like you.
Well, we just need to find the issues we agree on. I go to Republican meetings because I go to Republican meetings because...
So you don't shut off anybody.
No,
right?
But first of all, if I win this, those are constituents, so it doesn't really matter. But I actually met somebody at a protest for the drilling out in the Everglades. He was Republican. Mm-hmm. So they are not for that either. So we have that in common. So instead of fighting with them, why aren't we joining with them at least on that issue? And there's others, but they believe in term limits. I believe in term limits. So they don't want the corruption. I don't want the corruption. So we have a lot in common. So to write them off as they're the enemy is
big mistake.
It's so counterproductive. Mm-hmm. It's completely counterproductive. But again, it keeps us all fighting.
Yes,
and it keeps no progress.
No progress. Not
and
getting
that's
anything
really
done.
the goal. Yeah. And you have it on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I go to a Republican meeting, and out of 25 people, there's probably a few of the MAGA hat wearer kind of people. You've got that. But most of the people there, they're just all diverse. Actually very diverse, more diverse than you would think, and actually more diverse than the Dem clubs. Age, race, gender, all of it. And so, to write off...
And most of them, if they're on the active side, if they're going out to meetings, they tend to agree with you also on the fact that we need to get big money out of politics.
Yes, they care. So instead of reaching out to them, we still are fighting against them. But so the problem is more within. It's within our own communities, our own groups, our own political parties, everybody trying to keep us insulated amongst ourselves and pointing out the other. Whether it's at the Dem clubs, oh, it's all Trump, it's the Republicans, it's all Trump, it's all Republicans.
That doesn't really lead to any meaningful debate.
Well, that's the thing. I won't participate in what I call Russiagating or Trump hating.
Yeah, no.
It completely doesn't serve.
What do you think about impeachment?
I'm not in favor of it.
Me either.
And that does not go over well with a lot of the Democrats.
No.
I think that, look, when he's out of office, I'm pretty sure he'll get indicted. The Southern District of New York is going to indict him. No, I mean, they've been chomping at the bit.
Yes.
And I ultimately think he'll end up where he deserves to end up. But when we know for a fact that the Senate won't remove him, we're really just wasting time. And to say it's a matter of principle now, when we've had like 3 administrations not doing their jobs, why now? Because you just don't like him because he's mean and he sends out mean tweets and he's just politically incorrect and
then we're all just
and his policies are horrible.
His son, right? We're just responding to what he does.
I mean, yeah, it's like we're letting him set the dialogue and we're basically on the constant defense.
Yeah.
But his policies, as much as people hate them, and I'm not a fan, they're not new. Obama was the deporter in chief. That was his nickname. So, to say that these are new things is extremely short-sighted and dangerous. And the people that think, oh, once we get rid of Trump, we're fine. It's all good. We just got to get rid of Trump and everything's fine. No.
Yeah, like when there's people that say that anybody is better than Trump.
No, because if you're not addressing the environment that led to him, then we're not doing anything because he is a symptom of a problem. He is not the problem. He's gross, but he is not the problem. So what led to him? How did we get to that point? They don't want to look at that. They just want, by going impeachment, you're able to shift the whole focus, blame it all on Trump, make it all be about him. And in the meantime, the double benefit, they don't have to be talking about issues. They don't have to be talking about single payer because they're focused on impeachment.
Right.
So establishment Dems are all about going after Trump because then they don't have to put anything on the table.
Exactly.
Right. So they're not offering anything to the party. And by party, I mean the Universal Party, not the Democratic Party. I mean the party of our existence, right? They're not bringing anything. They just want to criticize. So they like that. They get everyone out with their pitchforks and go after. They're going to go right. It's like a mob mentality. We're going to go get Trump. We're going to go get him and his wicked children too. And you know, I am of the mindset that let's say Hillary had won, I believe we would be exactly where we are right now. We would just not have people paying attention because she would do it more politically correct. She would have a smile on her face while she's selling arms to the Saudis. She wouldn't flat out say, oh yeah, we're in Syria, we're blocking the oil, we're protecting the oil. I actually appreciate that he put it out there. We're there, we're protecting the oil. Most presidents would say, no, human rights violations, we have to protect those people. He's like, no, we're there for the oil. I kind of found that refreshing. And again, I'm not a supporter. You know what I'm saying? I don't support him and I don't support his policies.
No, right, but that's why, like, when you hear Republicans say that they appreciate the sincerity of Bernie, where I've seen it, it's countless. They're always saying, well, at least Bernie is honest about it, unlike Elizabeth Warren, who kind of flips off or quiet silences herself on that. Bernie says, yes, we're going to raise your taxes.
Well, it's the only thing in my mind that beats a populist on the right is a populist on the left.
There you go.
You cannot beat a populist with a centrist. It's never going to happen.
No.
And the fact that they think it will. Well, and I don't even know that they think that. The truth is I truly believe.
Yeah, will they really go for Biden?
The establishment Democrats are more interested in beating Bernie than beating Trump. And they keep look, now Bloomberg's in, because Biden wasn't doing, they can't, here, would you like, how about a black woman? How about a gay man? How about it, like, they just can't offer us enough things to try to get it, and yet they're all the same because they're all establishment. They all work for the same people, so I don't care what their identity is. They're answering to the same corporations.
Right.
People like Mayor Pete or Kamala Harris, their donors are Clinton donors. So to think that they're going to offer anything new is just completely naive. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
But one thing is certain, and it's that at least in some of these debates, at least Bernie has set the tone for a lot of these questions. Now they're talking about Medicare for all.
He's changed our whole world in the past few years, more than anybody.
And he did it mostly at first as an independent.
Yep.
And it shows you that once you persevere on something, even if they ignore you, eventually your word will come across and people will know about you. And I know more and more people are going to know about Jen Perelman after this wonderful conversation that we had.
And I have to plug my social media sites. So when you tell me when you're wrapping up, because if I don't, then Peter will be mad at me.
Definitely. Now I hand over the microphone, that's right there, to Jen. Tell them where to go. Jen.
Okay, so please go to jen2020.com. That's Jen with one N. You could sign up as a volunteer. You could donate. We need monthly donors, $23 for District 23. We are completely non-corporate and working for the people. We are also Gen 2020 on Facebook, and we can be followed on Instagram and Twitter at GenFL23. So I appreciate all the likes and follows, and all that really helps us get the word out.
Didn't you recently reach like 1,000 donors? Saw your videos?
I did. We just hit 1,000 individual donors. 1,000 individual donors. You know, and what's really cool, the coolest thing that's happened so far in this whole thing is a total stranger sent me a check for $2,800.
Wow.
Which I know will happen more because that's the max, so I know we'll get some. I know. But it was the first time, and it was very exciting. And I looked this guy up, and the only person he's ever donated to before was Bernie.
There you
and
go.
I almost cried. I'm like, oh my God. Like, so whether or not it's because he hates her because he loves Bernie, or whether I'm just so great like Bernie that he wants to support me, I don't know. But it was really cool. So somebody who isn't really a donor gave to me that much money. It was huge. Like, it felt really, you know. So we'll take big donations. I mean, we just won't take corporate donations.
Yeah, because unfortunately we are forced to work with the tools that they have given us. I mean, I've heard that you support shorter cycles for elections.
I support publicly financed elections. I would love a 3-month election cycle. Like, they do it in the UK. It's
You've
the
been
same
running
thing.
a campaign for a couple months now, right?
I started this in January.
It's
and here's
exhausting.
the thing. The thing that really irks me the most is that regular people can't do this.
No, it's out of their hands.
They can't. First of all, who could afford to do this? Who could afford to take time off of work for a year? I'm very privileged that I can afford to do this because my husband works and I can afford to do this. It's a privilege. And what I say is it's my privilege to lend my privilege. But the goal would be for when people say, why are you running? My question is, why aren't you running? Why aren't they running? Why isn't everybody running? And it's because they can't, because we've created a system that completely insulates the elites. And so my thoughts, if I can get in there and before I get out, get to some form of, at a minimum, getting rid of Citizens United, but definitely more towards, we need publicly financed elections.
We do. It would make the playing field more equal.
It's the only way we'll
fair.
get anything done. It's the only way.
It would be more honest and transparent.
It's true.
And like I've met literally people who are super involved in politicking. They go to these activist groups past their work hours, so they stay up late, they try to do all these things, and then they say, I really wish I could run for commissioner or mayor, but I can't give up my job because
my goal
I am the
is
sole breadwinner. So you say that
crazy.
It's a privilege for you to run.
Oh, it's a
I'd
privilege.
say also that it's a privilege for the people to be able to have a candidate like you.
I hope so.
Because then you're accessible. You're somebody who would respond to their needs.
It's true, and so there's two things I've learned in doing this that are the key factors that are necessary for a decent candidate, and I'm not saying that just because it's me, it's just what I've realized. So at first it was all just non-corporate, right? We can't take corporate money, we can't be beholden to corporations or special interests. You also can't be looking as a political career. You can't be in this for a career. Those are the two things, because even if you don't take corporate money, but you're in this for a career, you're going to make decisions based on what serves your career.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two factors. It's non-corporate and it can't be career. And the thing that we have right now are all these elite careerists that are just in there. They're just there, like it's just their career. A politician that's not a career. And I've actually had somebody the other day, and I'm not going to mention names, it's somebody who is a local fixture in Broward politics who is now running for something else in Broward politics. And the comment was about some work that she had done, and that she was upset that you could see something in her tooth or whatever, and this whole thing.
A cosmetic thing.
Yeah, it was a cosmetic thing. And the attitude was like, I can't be seeing this, I'm a politician. And I didn't correct it or whatever, but I'm thinking, that's not a job. That's not a career path. And yet that's what we're finding. So we need to get people out of there that are looking at it for their own career benefit. And why aren't these people mentoring people coming in? Because they want that job. They're going to keep their career. I don't want that at all. I want to be on an artist colony in Asheville with bees and chickens and goats. And instead I was asked to do this. But it's like my goal would be to be mentoring somebody, preferably younger, to come up and want to do this. So you be there for a few terms, you get some good connections, you start working on good policy. But if somebody in my district who's non-corporate and progressive wants that job, please have that job.
Of course.
It's not,
pass the baton.
I don't want to live there. I don't want to be in bed with those people forever. I don't even know if I'll be able to have enough showers in a day. So, for me, it's just a matter of, you ever feel like you see kids fighting and somebody needs to be the grown-up?
Exactly.
You ever feel like you're like, please?
I mean, like off camera, this is something that people should know. We were talking about things that we like doing. Jen realized that I love to paint. Like, you're in my room.
Oh, it's not that you love to paint. You're an amazing painter.
I am an artist.
An amazing
and then
artist.
Jen goes on to explain how she does these amazing things for Etsy. I mean,
I do. I have a little
she's
Etsy
an
store.
artisan.
Wicked Gypsy Designs on Etsy. You can
there
check
you go.
me out.
I mean,
I'm the Wicked Gypsy.
So, like, you have a life outside of this.
That would be my actually, I'm telling you,
Wait,
I would
what's in
rather
your
be
heart?
living in the mountains and doing that.
Yes.
But I'm in a very fortunate, privileged position that most people will never be in, to be able to do this and be a voice for those people, at least until I can get that to where they can come in. And that's my personal goal.
Yeah.
If I have to be there a few terms, so be it. But it's my privilege to represent this district. It's not necessarily something that I would say I want to go to Washington and be with all those people and get involved in that swamp that it is.
Yes.
But people have to come in there that are not bought and paid for. And I can't be bought.
No.
I don't need money and I don't need the job. So it's, it'll be interesting to see people try to come and, figure out ways to buy me and whatever. It'll be really entertaining. I don't see how that could happen.
No.
So that's what we need. We need people that aren't bought by corporations and aren't in their own ego careers.
Exactly.
And that is the only way this is going to change. That's,
Yes. So it's been an absolute pleasure and again a privilege.
You're so great. I can't.
This is a wonderful conversation. Girl power all the way.
Definitely.
So District 25 and
District 23.
Watch out, because we've got some candidates here for you. By the people, for the people.
Definitely.
People before profits.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. We're done.